All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Moneyline MMA returning after another UFC weekend. This one was Noche UFC from last weekend. We had a belt on the line in which it was decided to not have been given up, but also not won. It was interesting. The judges decided on a majority draw, and then they still put the belt around Grasso. I was fascinated by that. I was like, huh. I guess when you're Magomed Ankalaev, you don't get the belt. But when you're Alexa Grasso on Noche UFC, you do. Interesting. Not sure if there's some bias there, but it does kind of seem like it. In any case, oh man, we both had Grasso. Jose was much less confident than me. Didn't work out, but it was a push. If anybody here had money on it, I did. I had a parlay actually with Jack Della Maddalena, who was my one weight, and Raul Rosas Jr., who was my five weight, and I still won because the third leg was a push. So that was pretty nice. I know JDM was my one weight, but I still went with the bet there, and it was a close fight, no doubt about it. But he got the job done, and Zellhuber got the job done, and yeah, that was just a great night overall of fights. Other than the main event, man, honestly, it was a great fight. Like, I'm not knocking the fight as a whole, but the fact that it ended in a decision, I'll admit, even though I picked Grasso, if anyone would have won that fight, probably Valentina. Probably Valentina. It's a close argument, I guess, could be made either way, but I do think Valentina kind of showed a better display, like most consistently throughout that fight. So that's just my opinion. Otherwise, we're going to start bringing you guys the heat for this Saturday. This is actually going to be the last card the UFC puts up for a couple of weeks. I believe we have the end of September and the beginning of October off for a couple of weeks. This is first weekend, that being the end of September, will be the first weekend without UFC fights in a while. So this will be our last show until the UFC comes back, and I believe it comes back with a pay-per-view event right away in the middle of October. This fight's coming to you guys from the Apex in Las Vegas at the usual times, but actually a little earlier in the day this time, it looks like, with the prelims starting at 2 Central, 3 Central, and the main card starting a little later in the day, but not quite as late as 9 o'clock. This is headlined by Fiziev versus Mateusz Gamrot. Lightweight phenoms on the rise. And as always, we're going to bring you guys our picks with the 5 weight system. There are 5 fights on the main card, and Jose and I have picked these fights and given them a weight from 1 to 5, with 5 being the heaviest, aka the most confident pick, 1 being the lightest and least confident pick. Week to week, the 5 could be thought of as like 100 pounds, and 1 could be thought of as a piece of paper. Sometimes the one weight also carries a lot of weight. It varies week to week. Sometimes the one weight feels like it's 50 pounds. But in all reality, the point is that 5 weight is more confident than the 1 weight, always. So that being said, we're going to start with our most confident picks of the night. My most confident pick of this Saturday night, in fact, is going to be the one and only women's fight on the main card. It's not something that I often touch on, especially for a 5-weight pick, but this is a rematch between Marina Rodriguez and Michelle Waterson-Gomez. Big fan of Michelle Waterson-Gomez for reasons outside of her skills in the ring. Won't go any deeper than that. And Marina Rodriguez obviously already beat Michelle Waterson-Rodriguez once. Michelle Waterson, excuse me, and honestly pretty decidedly. It was a unanimous decision. Gomez got 1 takedown, but didn't really get to do much with it. It was a 5-round fight. Went the full 25, and she took the L. That's mainly what I got here. I think the same is about to happen. I don't think Michelle has improved her striking enough to stand up with Marina Rodriguez. Jose, what do you have for this one?
Yeah, Nick, like yourself, I also have Marina Rodriguez as my 5 weight. And reason being is, yeah, Michelle Watterson has not looked good in her recent fights. As a matter of fact, she's only won 1 out of her last 6 fights, and that was via a split decision to Angelina Hill. And Don't want to talk too much about Angelina Hill, but that's not really like, winning split with her. Unfortunately, doesn't really mean the most, not the biggest thing, not the biggest win in the world, to be honest. And Marina Rodriguez, she's coming off 2 losses as well. But again, she was part of one of those wins. She was one of those losses that Michelle Waterson received. So Marina Rodriguez already having a win over her, I think overall is no brainer that she's going to most likely get this win, and that's why she's a big favorite. When it comes down to the striking differential, she throws almost five. She almost lands 5 significant strikes per minute, while Michelle Waterson lands 3.63. I'm expecting Marina Rodriguez with her 3-inch reach advantage to dominate Michelle Rodriguez again. Either UD decision because I don't know if she'll finish Michelle Waterson, but I ultimately don't see Michelle Waterson beating Marina Rodriguez on the feet. And when it comes to submissions, Michelle Waterson does have good submission game, but Marina Rodriguez has actually never been submitted in her career either. So for this one, I think it'd be safe to say that Marina Rodriguez is probably going to get this via unanimous decision again.
Yeah, man, you said it best. Honestly, that was going to be my last point. Is just that Michelle's main path to victory here, you would think, is ground control time and/or submission. And like you said, Marina's never been submitted in her pro career, and I don't expect that to happen against an opponent she's seen and beat before. I really think, there must be a reason that Michelle Gomez signed on the dotted line to fight this. She believes she can win, and she wants the rematch. But in all reality, man, she's 5-1 in her last 6 fights. She's 0-3 in her last 3 fights. She's been struggling a lot, big time, and she's been fighting once a year and just not winning. I really think that's maybe the one thing you could say for her advantage is the desperation and or the feeling of needing to get something done, and therefore maybe there's something from within that Michelle is able to use as drive more than Marina Rodriguez. But man, I just don't think that's going to be enough to out battle pure skill in the striking game. And not to mention, Marina's got a little bit of size advantage, 3 inches on the height and 3 inches on the reach. I just think those things are going to all add up to a similar outcome that we saw in their first fight.
I totally agree with you, Nick. So, yeah, for this one, can't say enough about Marina Rodriguez. Um,
Yep.
Both Nick and I have her as our 5-weight between.
Oh.
Can you hear me? Or do you want to say one more thing about the last fight, Nick?
No, yeah, I was just gonna say you did cut out. We can hear you now, though. You still came through, but it just cut out for a second. I think you're good now.
Oh, all right, bet. Yeah, so the next fight is the featherweight bout between Charles Jourdain and Ricardo Ramos. Right now, Ricardo Ramos is the betting underdog at plus 108, while Charles Jourdain is the betting favorite at minus 138. Last we saw, Charles Jourdain looked amazing against Kron Gracie, while Ricardo Lamas, he got a phenomenal spinning back elbow in the first round via KO. So that first round KO via spinning elbow, and both guys have looked spectacular coming off their last fights. Ricardo Ramos, he is the underdog in this one, but I am going to ride with him, and I feel pretty good with him. And reason being is that Charles Jourdain, even though he did win unanimous decision against Kron Gracie, I personally feel like that was a fight he should have won. Kron Gracie was, out for like almost 4 years, and he's mostly a jiu-jitsu guy. So, that one, I think we both had Charles Jourdain. We kind of expected him to kind of just dominate that one on the feet as well. And when it came to it's MMA, so jiu-jitsu is a lot different when you're getting punched in the face. So that one I thought was definitely almost a give to Charles Jourdain. But before that, just looking how the fights came off against like Shane Burgos and Nathaniel Wood, losing majority and unanimous decision. I think Ricardo Ramos, I do think his hands are slightly better than Kron Gracie's, though Charles Jourdain still has better striking than Ricardo Ramos. I think Ricardo Ramos is actually going to be able to withstand and be on the feet with Charles Jourdain. And I actually think Charles Jourdain's only been submitted once, but I think Ricardo Ramos can actually sneak in a submission on him. When it comes to the grappling department, without a doubt, Ricardo Ramos is the better grappler. He averages about 2.58 takedowns per 3-round fight, and he has really good takedown defense. So I think when it comes to the grappling department, Ricardo Ramos is going to dictate this. And I think as long as, he doesn't get lost on the feet against Charles Jourdain and he sticks to his game plan of pulling him against the cage and trying to go for a submission, I think that's ultimately would be his path to victory. Charles Jourdain, I do think he's good, not to take anything away from him, but I do think maybe he may be a higher favorite than what I think he should be. What are your thoughts on this fight, Nick?
Interesting. I have Charles Jourdain, Air Jourdain to win this fight, and I really think this is a good spot for him. I think just looking at the stats, man, Jourdain definitely seems to win the striking. His striking differential is a strike. It's just almost a strike and a half, and Ricardo Ramos is negative half of a strike. And that's just that seems to be somewhat considerate to me. They both have 10 fights in the UFC, so pretty good experience. And I think you're right about the potential for a submission being one of the weaknesses for Jourdain. That's the one thing that I'd be concerned about, I guess, in the side of taking Jourdain and thinking he might lose. Guys like Kron Gracie obviously didn't do anything in the grappling game, but Kron Gracie's not a wrestler, right? He's a jiu-jitsu guy. So I'm not necessarily surprised that he, like with hindsight, of course, I'm not necessarily surprised on the outcome for that fight because Kron Gracie was really not able to. He didn't even really try for a takedown. Like it's not like did they even 0 for 0. They didn't even count any of his efforts as a takedown. He just kind of like laid down and wanted him to come to him. Wanted Jourdain to come to him and just like take top position, and Jourdain was smarter than that. So essentially, against a guy who can wrestle, Ricardo Ramos is landing 2.5 takedowns per 3 minutes. That could be a somewhat of a factor, and that leads to why Jourdain is only my one weight. So I'm a lot less confident than my 4 weight. But I still think Jourdain is going to be able to outlast any takedown attempts and use his considerable, in my opinion, it's considerable at least, striking advantage to get the win.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Yeah, this one, maybe I should not have had Ricardo Ramos as high, but the next few picks too, I think will justify why I put them where I have them that at. For this one, yeah, I think we're gonna have to agree to disagree on. Ricardo Ramos, yeah, Charles Jourdain, Ricardo Ramos has lost via KO twice. Half of his losses are come via KO/TKO. So Charles Jourdain can let loose and make it a quick night too. That is actually something I worry about for Ricardo Ramos. But ultimately, I do feel more confident with Ricardo Ramos than my other picks that I'm going to talk about next. So for this one, yeah, we're going to agree that I have Ricardo Ramos as my 4 weight, and you have Charles Jourdain as your 1 weight.
Yep, sounds good. So that's the first one we disagree on. We have one we agree, one we disagree, and we're gonna move on to my excuse me, my 4 weight of the afternoon. And my 4 weight's going to be looking at the second fight of the night. This is a battle, I'll say, between a guy named Brian Battle and AJ Fletcher, a welterweight bout. And this one struck me as interesting. Brian Battle, to my knowledge, is a guy who's started off as like pretty much this really huge, like upper 200s, 300-pound dude that kind of lost a lot of weight. Because of his size being 6'1", he's not necessarily that big of a heavyweight. And in all reality, today's light heavyweights are bigger than that too in a lot of cases. So he's now down into the welterweight class. And that kind of highlights the one thing I'm mainly saying to watch on this fight. I have a lot of confidence in Brian Battle if he can make the scale looking good. His problem earlier in the year against Gabe Green, he missed weight. They still fought, and he got the round 1 win. But it seems to always be with that asterisk because he was overweight. He needs to be able to get that in check. I think if Brian Battle looks good on the scales, I'm excited to see what he can do against AJ Fletcher. Nothing against AJ Fletcher, but his striking differential is pretty bad. And I think he kind of relies on wrestling when in danger, and it's just not his. It hasn't worked in most cases. He did get this. He's coming off a submission win against Themba Gorimbo. That is not like I don't think that's again Brian Battle. I guess isn't like some insane fighter, but I think Brian Battle is a little better than Themba. And I think Brian Battle is going to be able to dictate his position more, and therefore potentially get a knockout. But in the end, I just think he's going to be able to win against AJ Fletcher. What do you got, Jose?
Yeah, Nick. So for this one, I agree with you on Brian Battle. He's actually my one weight, but Brian Battle, he has looked nothing but good in that loss, that unanimous decision loss to Renat Fakhretdinov. It was no you know was it, Renat the Gladiator. He's a beast. He's like 21-1, and we saw how fast he finished Kevin Lee. So that definitely was like different levels. He was definitely paired up with, like, no one knew Renat's going to be this good, and I think he's going to be a big problem in the welterweight division. And so I think it was just a mismatch. But for this one, I think it's a match he should win. Fletcher, he does have out of his last three fights, he does have two losses via unanimous decision. I do think Ryan Battle is going to be good enough to get actually a unanimous decision win over AJ Fletcher. And on the feet, the reach advantage too is crazy. Ryan Battle has a 10-inch reach advantage over AJ Fletcher. So I think that, along with his higher volume of strikes, is going to play a big role in this fight. And that being said, I think Ryan Battle should ultimately get this via unanimous decision win. He may be able to finish AJ Fletcher. I think just how both guys have been looking in the UFC thus far, AJ Fletcher's definitely been coming up more short, especially losing two in a row via unanimous decision. I think Brian Battle is definitely the better fighter in this one. And again, I do think if he wasn't matched up with Renat, he probably would still, be undefeated in the UFC. But Renat, again, he's a big problem, and the fact that he went 3 rounds with him, I think shows that Brian Battle is definitely going to be the better fighter in this matchup. So that reach advantage and his striking IQ, I think, is ultimately going to get him a unanimous decision win or a potential KO/TKO.
Yeah, dude. Honestly, that's really insightful and accurate, man. I think Brian Battle should get the job done. Well, pending AJ Fletcher's ability to wrestle, and I don't think he's some outstanding, ridiculous wrestler. He does have 5 submission wins under his belt. Never been submitted himself. But again, one of those submissions, he just got against Themba, and otherwise, he hasn't really gotten a submission since 2021. He got one in 2020. So AJ Fletcher's submission game isn't necessarily that consistent in his fighting, and I just really think he's going to get caught. I don't even think we've discussed, at least according to UFC stats, Brian Battle has a 10-inch reach advantage. That is crazy. I think that size is going to be just very apparent. This is a fight night, smaller UFC Apex ring. So Brian is going to be able to step forward, I think, and AJ's going to be backed up against the fence all game. And if he's able to get a takedown, that might be one thing. But otherwise, I think he's just going to get beat up.
Yeah. Brian Battle also has a 5.5 leg reach advantage as well. So overall, yeah, I think Brian Battle he's gonna look bigger for sure compared to AJ Fletcher in there. So I think, yeah, for this one, maybe I should have had Brian Battle higher up on this list, to be honest. But he is my one weight, and he is your 4 weight.
Yep. So let's go on to your 3 weight.
Yeah, so for my 3 weight, this matchup is a featherweight bout between Bryce Mitchell and Dan Ige. Bryce Mitchell right now is the betting favorite as -196, while Dan Ige is the betting underdog at +152. For this one, I'm gonna side with Bryce Mitchell. He is coming off that loss to Ilia Topuria, but Ilia Topuria, he is a beast, and that's a fight I think, at the time when I was looking at it, it was more like a 50-50 type of thing. But now after seeing how Ilia Topuria, just like just the phenomenal fighter he's shown to be, just like, getting KOs and decisions, like he's got it all. He's got submissions, he's got KO power, and he's proven to go unanimous decision 5 rounds against like Josh Emmett. So Bryce, losing to him is totally understandable. And before that, he's got impressive wins, like one over Edson Barboza, which I thought, and Andre Fili. So this one, I think Dan Ige will probably be one of his bigger wins too. To date, nothing against Dan Ige as well. He's been looking nothing but phenomenal in his last 2 fights, especially against Nate Landwehr. This one, it's my 3 weight because it is kind of like a middle ground. I do view it almost like a 50-50 because it's 50K Dan Ige. He doesn't have that many KOs out of his 17 wins, only 5 of them, but he has proven it that, like, recently, a couple fights ago, that he's still got the power. And um, Bryce Mitchell hasn't been really knocked out before, but who knows? I'm riding more with Bryce Mitchell though for this one, so he's my 3-weight. What are your thoughts on this one, Nick?
Man, I do love the idea of Bryce Mitchell succeeding. I got nothing against the guy. I got my money here in my 3-weight, at least, on Dan 50K Ige. A lot of it is motivation behind what I can't believe is him being a plus 150 underdog. At least looking at Tapology here, the line opened at plus 135. Money's coming in on Thug Nasty. And I get it. Like you said, his loss right now, his main loss is against Ilia Topuria, who's really should be a challenger. One of the next challengers, if not the next challenger. So I get it, right? Ilya's a beast, and he's been on a tear. And Bryce was able to beat some studs in his rise to where he currently is. But obviously, Ige needs no introduction either. And Ige's really only ever lost to like the top of the line guys outside of his his introduction run where he lost in 2018. But other than that, he's only lost to guys like Calvin Cater, Josh Emmett, Mozvar Evloev. And I think those are respectful losses to take. And I don't think Bryce Mitchell, like, this is just a spot where Bryce is going to be tested. And if he beats Dan Ige, then he's proven himself to be, in the top 5 of the division, I would say. But if he loses, he's going to kind of be a gatekeeper, I think, for most of his career. It'd be hard to see him losing against Dan Ige and being able to make another run. I shouldn't say make another run, but just considering his matchup style, I don't know another path for him to continue to get. I guess if Volk retires or something, but like, Bryce Mitchell really needs to show something against Dan Ige, because guys like Ilia Topuria aren't going away. If he thinks he's going to be a challenger for the belt, a title holder, he needs to be beating these guys. As good as Ilia Topuria is, he needs to be way better than he was, losing in the second round, getting choked out. So, yeah, that being said, I'm relying on Dan Ige to get the job done here. I think I'll give a lot of respect to Bryce if he can get this job done, but I'm leaning on the fact that he won't be able to take out one of the stalwarts of the division, Dan Ige.
Yeah, I totally understand. Bryce Mitchell, yeah, the thing is he's mostly got strong grappling and submission game. Most of his wins are via submission. Dan Ige's never been submitted before, and yeah, you're right. It is kind of I'm wondering why he is like as big of an underdog as he is. So I do see some money on for Dan Ige too. To be honest, he does have a higher. He throws more strikes than Bryce Mitchell, and when it comes to the grappling, I think Dan Ige definitely is going to fare well against Bryce Mitchell. If Bryce Mitchell gets this win, I honestly see it being more via unanimous decision win against Dan Ige, which I think would be more impressive as well. Then, because I understand, I don't think Dan Ige is going to get submitted by Bryce Mitchell, even though Bryce Mitchell has phenomenal grappling. Yeah. I think it's definitely going to ultimately come down more to the feet in this one, and Dan Ige surprisingly has a 1-inch reach advantage. So I think Bryce Mitchell's really gonna have to pull through. That's why he is my 3-weight again. I do view this more like a coin flip as well. But Bryce, I am siding with the Bryce Mitchell in this one. So I have him as my 3-weight. Again, I don't think he's gonna get the submission win. I think it's gonna be via unanimous decision, and so I think people will be surprised. I think Bryce Mitchell is better, and again, I don't think Dan Ige is definitely the level of Ilia Topuria. So. He's up there. He's definitely close, but I think if Ilia Topuria and Dan Ige fought, I think I definitely would go with Ilia Topuria. But that's not this fight again, so we're gonna have to agree to disagree on this one. I have Bryce Mitchell as my 3-weight, and you have Dan Ige as your 3-weight.
Yep. Yeah, and we all know MMA math doesn't work anyway, so we'll just have to see what happens on Saturday and go from there. There's a world where Bryce Mitchell fights Ilia again for the belt.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, that being said, we I believe we're down to one fight remaining on this card, if I'm not mistaken, and it's somehow excuse me, it somehow brought us to the main event of the evening. Um, it's not by design. Sometimes we talk about the main event first, sometimes last, and sometimes it's in between. But it is now time to discuss the two boys that bring us here this beautiful Monday afternoon, and what will bring us to the television screens on Saturday night to watch the fights. Rafael Fiziev and Mateusz Gamrot, lightweight prodigies, I might say. Both of these guys are on the up and coming, not age wise, they're in their low 30s, which is like really perfect for their rise in terms of getting to be a champion. Because that's when I feel like you hit your stride between experience and physical ability, at least in the UFC. Mateusz Gamrot does have I think about double as many professional fights as Fiziev, which is one of the things that I'm looking at in my pick. I think in general, Gamrot has had more competition, but strictly in the UFC, it's quite even if we're only considering UFC experience. And both these guys match up so similarly. They're both just about even or just negative in their striking differentials. And Mateusz really likes to incorporate his wrestling and try using takedowns. In fact, every single opponent that Gamrot has fought in the UFC, at least, he's taken down at least once. And I think that's somewhat considerable, even considering against a guy like Beneil Dariush, who he lost to in the end, but had 4 takedowns and more control time. So I think, if anything, Gamrot really just needs to clean up some of his striking acumen to become the next level. Fiziev is just one of those guys. I mean, I don't mean to ramble, but wow, I remember picking him against Gaethje and looking like a clown. He got the majority decision. It was somewhat close. For what it's worth, Fiziev put up a great fight, and that's why I don't blame anyone for picking Fiziev, because he really held his own in there against Gaethje, one of the best. So that being said, he's there's really undeniable truth that he's probably got the striking advantage over Gamrot, and Gamrot's going to need to overturn that and show that he's at least improved himself a little bit, and then be able to out wrestle Fiziev. So we'll see if that's doable. Fiziev has 90% takedown defense. But I also don't. I mean, he did fight against RDA. RDA landed 2 of 16 takedown attempts. That's really good takedown defense. So if Gamrot's not able to land that takedown, it could be a different story. That leads to why it's only my 2 weight. Jose, what do you got?
Yeah, so for this one, obviously also my 2 weight. This one I'm gonna actually differ with you. This one I'm going with Rafael Fiziev, and the reason is, yeah, I honestly do think, like, even though he lost majority to Gaethje, I honestly think it should have been closer than what it was, because he looked like he definitely took more damage, but he was definitely landing on Gaethje as well. I just think Gaethje just throws much harder punches than him. But that being said, and when it comes to the striking department, though, Mateusz Gamrot does have more MMA experience. When it comes to overall fighting experience, Steve has a pretty extensive record himself. His Muay Thai record is pretty huge, actually. He's got 39 wins, and 29 of those are by KO. And he when he was making his run before that loss to Justin Gaethje, he was racking up some KOs too, in the UFC. So I still think he has that finishing power. Gamrot, he hasn't been KO'd yet, and again, like you mentioned, he's had a long MMA career, but he just kind of won like a split decision to Jalen Turner. Nothing to take anything away from Jalen Turner too, but uh, I thought for that one, I had Jalen Turner win. I picked him to win that one, and I did kind of see him winning that one as well. I have to go back and see it, but like, losing to him the split decision too, I think that just kind of shows like the striking differential. Jalen Turner's not definitely nowhere near as good of a striker as Rafael Fiziev is. So that being said, I do think Rafael is going to bounce back in this one and get I think a unanimous decision win. I think ultimately it's just going to come down to the striking department. Um, Again, Mateusz Gamrot, like you said, does have to implement a strong wrestling game. Both guys, I don't think Rafael is going to initiate much of the takedowns on his side. I definitely see Mateusz doing that himself. And both guys have phenomenal takedown defense. So that being said, I do think it's going to be mostly on the feet, and it's going to come down to a unanimous decision win with Rafael Fiziev. And reason being is he does throw 5 point. He lands 5.06 significant strikes per minute, while Matus Gamrot's slightly over 3 per minute. I do expect Rafael. He's going to come in with fast punches coming. Matus Gamrot, he does. I don't know if his power is the same as Gaethje, so I think that's going to be like a big factor if it comes down to like almost like a split decision. Who causes the most damage? And again, Fiziev, I don't think he causes as much damage, but those punches over time do add up. So I see him taking this UD. So that's why he's my 2 weight.
Sounds good, man. Yeah, I totally respect the pick there. I like Fiziev a lot. I think he's got a lot to offer, and there are paths for both of these guys to win, which leads to why the spread I think is so similar and so even. Well, at least open that way. With Fiziev a minus 140 favorite, he's moved to minus 164. So there's a little bit more money coming in on Fiziev, which is understandable. I think both these guys are really hitting or already in the primes of their career. So it's just it's gonna be interesting, man. Fiziev is on a tear. He had, what was it, 2 KOs in a row going into his loss against Justin Gaethje, and those weren't against bad fighters at all. So Fiziev has already proven that he's been there, done that, and if Gamrot hasn't improved at least a little bit in his striking game, then I think it's going to be outmatched. So I'm really leaning on the fact that Mateusz is consistently improving and training and trying to be better. I think part of it is his training at American Top Team, but we'll see if it pays off in this case. Easily, I think right away in round 1 we'll be able to tell how this fight's going to be in terms of how much Gamrot's going to be able to contend on the feet. So, yep, finishing off the card here, we'll have another disagreement. Jose's got Fiziev and I have Gamrot, both of our 2 weights for the main event coming up to you guys on Saturday. That being said, our Moneyline MMA endorsed lock of the week is going to be Marina Rodriguez. Jose and I both with the 5 weights. Very confident in the women's MMA there. And then if you want to add in, we didn't agree on the 4 weights. Well, it would be Battle then, because Jose had his 1 weight on Battle. I was my 4 weight. So weight on the scales though for that one, I would always recommend, because for Battle at least he was 3 pounds overweight last time. Let's make sure he's ready to go. There could be some value in it though, because if you make a bet and a guy is overweight, like it's like it's impossible to predict for some people, right? But thinking about it, right? Your bet doesn't change because your bet isn't reliant on him making weight. It's reliant on the fight happening. So, like for making the bet now, in him being overweight, I guess it's not the worst, because in that case, you're getting a better fighter. You're getting a guy who didn't cut as much weight, right? And he's fighting a guy who did. But you're also taking the risk that he doesn't go through the grueling cut. If Brian Battle does cut all the way down and he feels like garbage, he might not recover that well. So that's the only reason I say to be careful, because you could see right when he gets on that scale on Friday, and if his face looks like it's in rough shape, if he's looking real drawn out and tired, like, that man is going to have to fight tomorrow. Just saying, come Friday. So be careful with your money in that sense. Those are our best bets of the week. Thank you for listening. And just a reminder, there will be no fights after this weekend for the rest of September. And we will return upon the next UFC card in October. So have a great rest of your week, guys. Thanks for listening. And until next time.